Hello everyone, I am here with the third chapter of The Hardy Boys, the Viking Symbol Mystery. This one is called Rune Stone Curse. Where we left off yesterday, remember, the guy they were trying to question and stuff, they wanted to go into his hospital room to question him. He escaped out the window and was with another guy, remember? And they ran and got into a car really fast. Well, that's where we're taking off from. Joe jumped out the hospital window and joined Frank, who by now was sprinting across the grassy lawn after the escaped patient. They were too late to capture Kelly. The getaway car was already roaring off down the tree-lined street. "Let's chase them," Frank cried out. He ran up the block to the boy's convertible and jumped behind the wheel. Joe hopped in beside him. Frank turned on the ignition, swung the yellow car out from the curb, and raced after the speeding sedan. It turned a corner. For a while, the brothers were afraid the car had eluded them. But suddenly, they spotted it a few blocks ahead. "Let's hope we don't get any red lights," Frank murmured. The chase continued through Bayport and onto the main highway, out of town. Frank pressed the accelerator to the floor. Soon they were out of sight. They were out in the open country, The green sedan was still in sight. "We're in luck," Joe exclaimed, pointing to the left, because a long freight train was rumbling down the railroad tracks, which crossed the road just ahead. The crossing gates were still starting to lower. "Now we'll catch Kelly and find out what's going on," Frank gloated. The green sedan was almost at the crossing. Putting on an extra burst of speed, the car raced across the tracks. It avoided the gates by inches. Seconds later, the train roared by. "We've missed our chance," Frank groaned as he braked to a stop. "The freight's at least 80 cars long," Joe grumbled over the noise of the wheels and the shrill sound of the train's whistle. The brothers shifted impatiently in the front seat of their car while they watched the boxcars go by, clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Finally, the caboose passed them, and the gates were raised. Frank started the car again and drove across the tracks. As they expected, the green sedan was nowhere in sight. "Those guys have a big lead on us now," Joe said, "but let's follow anyway." About 5 miles farther on, Frank brought his car to a halt. "It's no use, Joe," he said quietly and turned the convertible back toward Bayport. "They could have turned off any one of these side roads. I wonder who Kelly's pal is," asked Joe. "Kelly must have got word to him somehow. The red-headed man could have come to the hospital and roamed around until he found Kelly," Frank suggested. "The red-headed man, I wonder if that was Sherm."
What?
"Are you the red-headed man that got this boy to escape?"
Probably.
"It was you. It was Sherm. I knew it. I knew it. The red-headed man." "Kelly's leaving that way sure makes him suspect," Joe remarked. The boys had almost reached the railroad tracks when Joe, glancing out his window, exclaimed, "Stop! There's a green sedan!" He pointed to a tree-shaded culvert running at right angles to the road. Instantly, Frank came to a halt. The boys leaped from the convertible and ran across the macadam road for a better look. The car was well hidden by the bushes and trees. A quick glance told the Hardys that the sedan was empty. "Kelly and his friend must have jumped onto the train," Frank commented as he wrote down the car's license number. "If only we could stop the train." "Why not?" asked Joe. "Chief Colig can arrange that." The boys ran back to their car and drove on quickly until they reached a gasoline station where Frank called the police chief. "Here's news for you, Frank," said Chief Colig. "That sedan was stolen this morning." The chief said he would call ahead to the station master at the next stop 10 miles ahead to have the freight train delayed until the Hardys could search it. "Good luck," the official said. With Joe taking a turn at the wheel, the yellow convertible sped along a narrow dirt road, which was a shortcut to the next station. "It's here," Frank cried out. The freight train was slowing to a halt at the small platform. It took the Hardys only a moment to explain to the station master and the train conductor what they wanted. "No use looking in the locked cars," the conductor said, "but there are some empty." Led by the two men, the brothers hurried down the tracks, reaching the empty container cars. There were half a dozen of them, but none contained the suspects. "Guess you're out of luck, fellows," said the conductor, who was about to wave the engineer on. "Wait," Joe called, as he ran toward the caboose to check the other side of the freight train. A door on one of the supposedly closed cars was open. Frank followed, and both boys climbed inside. At one end of the sawdust-covered floor was a huge pile of empty grain sacks. The brothers ran forward eagerly, hoping to find their quarry hidden behind them. But neither Kelly nor his accomplice was there. Disappointed, Frank went to the boxcar door and hopped down. Joe walked over slowly, shaking his head in perplexity. Suddenly, Frank called, "Jump, Joe, jump!" At the same instant, the train gave a forward lurch ahead. Joe hurled himself toward the opening and leapt out just as the heavy sliding door slammed shut. "Wow," Frank watched the train slowly gather speed. "Guess the conductor didn't hear you. The weight of that door would kill someone." "And I was nearly the one," Joe said. The boys walked back to their car and started for Bayport. Each was thinking, was Kelly ever on the freight? If so, when did he get off? Or did he flee in some other direction after abandoning the stolen sedan? When the boys reached home, Frank called police headquarters and reported their failure to find Kelly to Chief Collig. Next, they gave their father a full account of the fugitive's disappearance and the discovery of the clothes from Toronto and Quebec. Mr. Hardy immediately wired the Edmonton police a description of the fugitive and stressed the possibility that the man might be wearing a bandage on his head. Then the detective turned to the boys and smiled. "Which makes you all the more eager to start for Canada, I'll bet." "Right, Dad," Frank said, grinning. "May we leave tomorrow morning?" Joe asked excitedly. "Sorry, son," said Mr. Hardy. "You'll need the next few days to get ready." "That long?" Frank looked dismayed. His father's eyes twinkled. "Yes. You see, boys, your pilot's license are for the land planes, and you're going to require seaplane ratings for this trip. I want you to know how to handle a float plane if it's a necessity. "We already know how to fly," Frank protested. Mr. Hardy smiled. "And skillfully, too, but takeoff and landings are a bit different with a seaplane, since you're dealing with a variable runway, water, which may be rough." "When do we start?" Joe asked. "Jack Wayne said he could begin your training tomorrow," Mr. Hardy replied. "You're going to meet him at the field." Jack was a private pilot whom the detective often used on long trips in the Hardy plane. He had taught Frank and Joe to fly. Oh, came the voice of Aunt Gertrude from the doorway. "More trouble. Now you're talking about landing on the water? It sounds very dangerous." "How about a ride while we try it?" Joe teased. "No, thank you. I prefer cooking. I came to tell you dinner's ready." After the meal of juicy, tender roast beef, buttered baked potatoes, fresh asparagus, and chocolate cake. Don't listen to that, babe. The boys excused themselves to study the Canadian map in their atlas. Just as they turned to the proper page, a rattle of metal and a short beep from the street made the boys smile. "Chet's jalopy," Joe said. A minute later, their chubby friend walked into the living room. "Hi, fellows." "You look worried," Frank said. "What's up?" Chet shook his head. "I'd love to go to Canada with you, but I think I'll change my mind." "What?" the brothers chorused. "Why?" Their chunky friend rolled his eyes dramatically. "I've been reading up on the Rune Stones, and boy, oh boy, are they unlucky." "Yes, sir," said Chet. "And the Horkle Stone, which is the most evil of them all," he paused for emphasis, "was found right near where you're going." All right, and that was chapter 3. We'll read chapter 4 tomorrow, and it is called The Dangerous Solo. I hope you guys enjoyed the story, and I hope you guys have a great night's sleep. Bye, guys.